It was farming season and the people of Akwuke were carrying out their daily task at the farm. Farmers were in their respective farmlands working. In one of the farms was Obiefuna working. And away from the farm came Onuwa, the most feared man in the village. Onuwa was known for having whatever he wanted. People's land, livestock, women, and even lives. The village knew better than to deny him. But no one ever stood up to him. Not the king, the elders, or even the bravest warriors of the village. Everyone feared what Onuwa could do to them and their families. And so they obeyed him, giving him whatever he asked for without question. It was said that he could transform into an owl and fly across the village, and sometimes dance under the full moon with other witches and wizards, summoning spirits from the underworld. The villagers called him a wizard. They said he had sold his soul to the spirits for power. When the farmers saw him approach the farm, they feared and wondered what he was coming there to do. "What are you doing on my land?" Onuwa asked, with a voice that echoed like the rumble of a thunder. The farmers, in shock, stood up, terrified, to see who he was talking to. Before Obiefuna stood Onuwa. Obiefuna gripped his hold tightly. He knew the land was not Onuwa's. It belonged to his family and had been passed down to him from his father. "Onuwa, what do you want?" Obiefuna asked. "This land, I want it." "You have no use of it," he said. Obiefuna told him that he couldn't have the land as it belonged to his family. Enraged, Onuwa moved close to Obiefuna, who stood there terrified. "Do not test me," he warned. "You know what happens to those who refuse me. You have until the end of this week to leave this land or else." Obiefuna's mouth opened, but no word came out. He had heard of the or else before, and he knew what it meant. The people who crossed Onuwa never ended well. Some, their farms were mysteriously burned down. Others had their livestock disappeared overnight. And some simply fell ill and died within days of confrontation. Onuwa didn't wait for a response. He turned and walked away. Obiefuna stood frozen. He knew that he was no match for the dreaded Onuwa. Obiefuna left the land in fear that day and never farmed on it again. Onuwa took over the farmland. Onuwa married and bound the most beautiful maidens in Akwuke with charms. But none of his marriages lasted. The maidens he married either flee or mysteriously disappeared, with rumors circulating that they had gone mad or that he had cursed them when they tried to leave. No one knew for sure. Despite his many marriages, he lived alone in a large compound on the outskirts of the village. The villagers avoided him at all costs. Everyone in Akwuke feared Onuwa, except for one woman who would soon change everything. One evening, while taking a stroll around the village, he came across a plantain farm with plantain trees scattered abundantly across the farm. The farm belonged to a humble farmer named Okude and his family. Onuwa saw how fruitful the farm was and wanted it. He went to Okude one afternoon and made the same cold demand he had made to many before. "I want your plantain farm, Okude. It is mine now, and I don't want to see you anywhere around it from now henceforth," Onuwa said, leaving no room for argument. Okude bowed his head in agreement. He had seen what happened to others who refused Onuwa, and he could not risk his safety and that of his wife and unborn child. Although the plantain farm was their only source of income, he considered defeat and told him to take it. But his wife Ada was not one to back down in fear. When she learned what had happened, she was furious. "You cannot give him our land, Okude. That is our only means of survival," Ada cried. Okude reminded her that Onuwa is dangerous and suggested they let him have the farm. "No," Ada shouted. "I will not let that man take what belongs to us." Ada, unlike the other villagers, was different. She came from the lineage of strong women in Ngo village. Okude knew there was no stopping his wife. Once she had made up her mind on something, and since he couldn't stop her, he just prayed and wished for her safety. The next day, Ada marched to Onuwa's compound. When she got there, she found him sitting under the shade of a tree. His eyes narrowed as he saw her approach. "So you've come to beg on your husband's behalf," Onuwa said. "I've come to tell you that you will not take our land," Ada told him. "You must be mad, woman. Do you know who you are speaking to?" "I know exactly who you are, but I am not afraid of you," Ada said, crossing her arms. "No one in this village dares to defy me. You are a fool if you think you can challenge me." Ada stood there undeterred. "Do your worst, Onuwa. You will not take what is ours. You will regret this, woman. I will show you what happens to those who dare to stand in my way." Ada told him that she has no fear of him. "If everyone else in this village fears you, I will be the last. Do your worst," she said. Onuwa stared at her for a long moment and then turned and walked away without another word. That night, as Ada slept, she felt a strange sensation in her stomach. It was as if something moved into her. She woke, clutching her belly. As she shook her husband awake, Okude turned to face her. "What is it? I feel something moved inside my belly and then moved out, and I don't feel pregnant anymore," Ada said fearfully. "What do you mean?" Okude asked. "The baby cannot just disappear." "I am telling you, Okude, I felt something leave my body." Okude sat up and placed his hand on her stomach. "The baby is still there. You are just imagining things." Ada shook her head. "No, something is wrong," she said, her voice trembling in fears. But Okude did not believe her. He rolled over and went back to sleep, leaving Ada to lie awake. By morning, the strange feeling of emptiness was gone, and she felt pregnant again. Ada tried to attribute her experience to a nightmare, but honestly, she knew something went wrong. Every 2 market days, the same thing happened. In the dead of night, she would feel the baby leave her body, only to return by morning. Ada grew weaker steadily, now weighed down by the fear and confusion. Meanwhile, Onuwa attended his coven meetings, proudly pregnant. He was applauded by the other witches and wizards for his cunning. They admired his ability to bend the village to his will, manipulate life and death as he pleased. One day, while Ada was coming back from the market, she met an old wrinkled woman on her way. The old woman told her that she was the one whose baby disappears every 2 market days. Ada's heart skipped a beat. She had not told anyone about her strange condition, apart from Okude, her husband, who never considered her words seriously. "How do you know that?" Ada asked. The old woman smiled. "I know many things, child. You are suffering because you stood up to the wizard. He could not kill you, so he is using your child to torment you." Ada's eyes widened. "Onuwa?" The old woman nodded. "Yes, he takes your child to his meetings and returns it when he is done, but you can stop him." "How? What can I do?" Ada asked. The old woman told her that she must leave the village that night, so that by the time he comes, he won't meet her to take her baby again. "But that is the first option," the old woman said. "If you want to stop him forever and disgrace him, then you will have to sacrifice your child to achieve that." "How?" Ada asked curiously. "When the baby leaves your body, you must go far away so that when he returns, you will not be there to take back the child. He will be forced to carry the pregnancy to term, and then the village will see him for the evil man he is." Ada stared at the woman in shock. Could this be true? Could Onuwa really be using her unborn child in such a way? With renewed determination, Ada returned home and told Okude what the old woman had said. They packed their belongings and prepared for the night ahead. They wanted to put an end to the terror of the evil Onuwa rather than just safeguarding their unborn child. They sought to destroy the evil that had haunted their village. Instead of leaving the village before nightfall, they stayed back. That night, as Ada felt the familiar sensation of the baby leaving her body, she and Okude quietly left their hut and made their way to Ada's village through the darkness. Okude held a small oil lamp in front of them, casting just enough light to see the narrow path leading out of the village. Ada clutched her belly, feeling an emptiness that terrified her. Behind them, Ahuke was quiet, with only the soft hum of incense filling the night air. "Do you think this would work?" she asked in fear. Okude looked ahead. As he answered, "We have no choice. If what the old woman said is true, this is our only way." They traveled for hours until they reached a thick forest on the outskirts of the neighboring village and rested under a tree. Exhausted, Ada sat on the ground, resting her back against the tree. The plan was for her to remain hidden until Onuwa could no longer return the child to her. The wizard would have no choice but to carry the pregnancy to term. But deep down, Ada wondered if it would be enough to stop a man as powerful as Onuwa from terrorizing the people. At dawn, Onuwa returned to Ada's hut to perform the ritual he had perfected over the weeks. His dark magic allowed him to use the unborn child's essence for his coven's bidding, but he always returned the child before dawn. This balance of life and death gave him great power, but tonight something felt off. When he arrived at Ada's hut, he found the door ajar. The room was empty. Panic gripped him. He quickly cast a spell to track Ada's location, but the charm failed. His face lined with anger as he realized she was gone beyond his reach. Onuwa stormed through the village, ignoring the curious glances of the villagers who watched him with wide eyes. He felt the weight of the child in his stomach. He knew that if he couldn't return the child, he would be cursed to carry it, and that would expose his secret to the entire village. "Where is she?" he muttered, clenching his abdomen. "She cannot hide from me forever." As the sun rose higher, the villagers of Ahuke noticed something strange about him. He wandered the village. His stomach that was usually flat had swollen overnight. The rumor spread quickly, and soon everyone in the village gathered to watch him. Onuwa had always been a figure of fear and power, but now he seemed weak and vulnerable. Some villagers said that the spirit had finally turned against him. Others believed that Ada, the fearless woman who stood up to him, had done something to protect herself from his witchcraft. "Is it true? Does he carry a child?" the people murmured. "How could that be? Men cannot bear children," the villagers said in disbelief. But the evidence was there for all to see. Onuwa's belly swelled more with each passing moment, and for the first time in years, the villagers dared to hope that his reign of terror might be coming to an end. The news of Onuwa's condition quickly reached the ears of the village king, Ezudo, who had long turned a blind eye to his dark dealings, afraid of the wizard's power. But with the entire village talking about his strange affliction, the king knew he could no longer remain silent. Ezudo summoned his council to discuss the matter. "What do we do, Your Majesty?" an elder asked, as they sat in the royal hut. "If Onuwa is truly cursed, this could be our chance to rid the village of him for good." "But we must be careful," another elder warned. "If we act against him and he regains his power, there will be consequences. His wrath could destroy us all." The king sat in silence as he pondered on the elders' suggestions. He knew they were right. Onuwa had ruled through fear for so long that even in his weakened state, the thought of defying him was terrifying. "We will wait," the king finally said. "We will watch and see what happens, but if the spirits have indeed turned against him, we must be ready to act," he said. As Onuwa lay in his compound, he was plagued by nightmares. In his dreams, he saw himself trapped in a dark forest, unable to move. The cries of a child echoed around him, growing louder and more frantic with each passing moment. He awoke drenched in sweat, clutching his swollen belly. The child inside him stirred restlessly. He had failed and was now powerless. He cursed Ada and vowed to find her and make her pay for what she had done. But doubt crept into his mind as he wondered if it was his magic failing him. Had the spirit truly abandoned him? Onuwa knew he could not rely on his own power to fix this anymore. He needed guidance from someone even more powerful than himself. And there was only one person who could help him now, the oracle who lived in the mountains beyond Ahuke. The journey to the oracle was a long one, but he had no choice. He set out at dusk, hoping to reach the oracle's shrine by nightfall, but his swollen belly made the journey difficult. When he finally arrived at the shrine, the oracle was waiting for him, her face hidden behind a veil. She sat cross-legged before a fire. "You have come to seek answers, Onuwa," the oracle said. Onuwa, with his pride now abandoned, knelt before the oracle. "I need to know how to undo this curse." The oracle laughed softly and then said to him, "You have meddled with forces beyond your control, Onuwa. The child you carry is not yours. It was never meant to be used in this ritual. I am powerful. I have controlled the spirit for years. Why has this happened to me?" "The spirit grew tired of your arrogance," the oracle said. "You have taken too much, and now you must pay the price." Onuwa's heart raced. There must be a way to reverse this. The oracle was silent for a long moment. Finally, she spoke. "The only way to free yourself is to find the people you wronged and make amends, especially the one whose child you're carrying. But be warned, she is protected by forces more powerful than you." As Onuwa sought the oracle's guidance, Okude and Ada had found shelter and food in Ada's village. The people of Nga welcomed them with great joy. Back at the oracle's cave, Onuwa stood in disbelief. Make amends? With that woman? Impossible, he spat. "You think yourself above retribution, Onuwa. If you do not humble yourself, the child will be born from your belly and your power will crumble." Onuwa recoiled at the thought. For years, he had taken whatever he wanted, using his powers to instill fear and dominance over the village. To now be at the mercy of a mere woman's forgiveness was unthinkable. "I will find her, but I will not beg," he said. "You may not have a chance," the oracle said. Onuwa returned to Akuke, eager to find Ada and force her to undo the curse. He gathered his most trusted followers, those who still feared his power regardless of the rumors of his affliction, and sent them to search the surrounding villages. For days, they scoured the land in search of Ada and Okude, but they found nothing. The villagers watched him with a mist of fear and curiosity, whispering among themselves. Some believed he was being punished by the spirits, while others feared that his power would return stronger than ever. Onuwa's condition worsened by the day. The villagers of Akuke had never seen him so vulnerable. His once powerful presence had been reduced to a shadow of itself, and his belly swelled unnaturally as the pregnancy continued to progress. Onuwa barely left his compound anymore. Even his closest followers had begun to distance themselves. Fear consumed him as he thought about the oracle's warning. "Humble yourself, or you will lose everything." But Onuwa could not imagine begging for forgiveness. His pride was too deep and his arrogance too ingrained. Meanwhile, the villagers were growing restless. They feared the Onuwa's punishment would only lead to more suffering for them. Even the king, Ezudo, found himself caught between conflicting advice. The elders urged him to act, to banish Onuwa before his condition worsened and brought ruin upon the village. But the king, still fearing his dark power, even in its weakened state, refused. One evening, the villagers gathered to discuss Onuwa's plight. An old man stood and spoke. This is the time for us to rise. Onuwa's hold over us is breaking. We must decide whether we will continue to live in fear or stand against him. The villagers murmured in agreement, but wondered who would be brave enough to confront him directly. Onuwa's madness grew. He was haunted by the child inside of him. He saw vision of Ada and the villagers mocking and taunting him for his weakness. At Nga village, Okwudi decided it was time he returned to his village with his wife. The villagers must have seen Onuwa with the pregnancy by now, and with the talisman given to her by the great Nnono, she would conquer him. Before dawn, they had left Nga to Akuke, and by dusk, they had arrived and went straight to the palace to tell the king everything. The king, elders, and some villagers accompanied Ada to Onuwa's hut. When he saw her, he asked her if she thought she would hide from him forever. I will take what is mine, he said. Would you have found me if I hadn't returned? Ada asked him as she moved closer to him. You've taken enough from this village, Onuwa, and your terror ends tonight. You think you can stop me? Onuwa asked angrily. I have ruled over these lands for years. No one dared defy me. But I am not afraid of you, Ada said. Your power is fading and the spirits no longer answer your call. With a roar, Onuwa lunged at Ada, his hands reaching her throat. But before he could touch her, the talisman around her neck flared with lightning. Onuwa stumbled backward. You cannot defeat me, he screamed, but his voice was filled with panic. Ada raised the talisman. It's over, Onuwa. You will no longer torment this village. Onuwa fell to his knees and lay crumbled on the ground before Ada. He realized that he had lost. His magic was no match for the power that protected Ada. Ada shook her head as she moved closer to him. You've given this village nothing but pain. Your time is over, Onuwa. Saying that, she raised the talisman. Onuwa let out a blood-curdling scream as his body collapsed. The villagers blinked in disbelief at the scene before them. They began to gather around Ada, their faces lined with awe and gratitude. For years, they had lived in fear of Onuwa's wrath, but now they stood before the woman who had faced him down and emerged victorious. Ezudo stepped forward with his royal robes dragging in the death. You have saved us all, he said to Ada. The dawn after Onuwa's defeat was unlike any other the village of Akuke had experienced. As the sun rose, it was as if the earth itself celebrated the end of an era. Ada, who had never sought glory or praise, stood humbly before them, holding Okwudi's hand. She felt a deep sense of relief. Though her child was sacrificed for this peace, she knew that her future children would be born into a world that is no longer overshadowed by the wizard. The villagers began to speak freely again. Men, women, and children worked with confidence, knowing that no one would oppress them anymore. The men whose lands were taken away by Onuwa reclaimed their lands and planted new crops, focusing on growth and prosperity. Some of Onuwa's followers, who had secretly practiced dark magic alongside him, feared being discovered by the villagers. They hid their identities, seeking to dissolve into the background, afraid that the people would seek vengeance for years of torment. The village council convened to decide what to do about these remnants of his reign. Should they banish those who had aided him or give them a chance for redemption? Ezudo summoned Ada to the council chambers to ask her opinion. These men and women may have been complicit in Onuwa's evil, the king said. But now that he is gone, do they deserve the same fate? Ada thought carefully and then told the king that Onuwa ruled through fear and some people followed him because they were afraid of him. She advised they judge them not only by their past but by their willingness to change. Those who confess to their roles and repented were given a chance to live in the village again under the watchful eyes of the elders. But for those who refused to acknowledge their past, justice was swift. The people of Akuke lived a life free from terror, and we are forever indebted to Ada and her husband Okudi, who made the ultimate sacrifice to bring peace to their kingdom. Ada became pregnant again and gave birth to twin boys, and the villagers joined the family in celebrating the children's arrival. The gods smiled upon her and blessed her with double joy for her troubles and sacrifices.